Hi. In case you wanted to follow up on some of the topics I covered in the latter part of the podcast series, let me give you some additional resources. They include The Destiny of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. He was one of the first psychologists to do life between lives, past life regression, where he would take his clients past their death in the physical world into their life in the astral world between their physical lives. And he wrote commentary on some of the things that his clients discussed there. Very interesting. The second book and the third book are by Jürgen Ziewe in Europe and Bill Bullman in the United States. And they each have about 2 decades worth of out-of-body exploration in the higher dimensions. And they talk about the higher dimensions from an experiential standpoint. And it's a different viewpoint on the higher dimensions, the non-physical dimensions. Robert Monroe was another person who popularized out-of-body experiences. He's also the founder of the Monroe Institute, which does classes in consciousness expansion, and they're about a half hour south of the University of Virginia. But he wrote these 2 books. The first one is basically about the out-of-body experience itself, Journeys Out of the Body. But his next book talks about his journeys into the astral dimension and the higher dimensions. He wrote a third book called Ultimate Journey, where he actually went up into the causal dimension and skipped the mental dimension. It's not really apparent in the narrative that he did, but that was an incredible ultimate journey that he did take. And it's an interesting read when you want to get something a little bit more complex in the out-of-body discussion. The next book by George Meek. George was an inventor for an air conditioning corporation, got a number of patents, got fairly wealthy, and spent that money over the course of a decade plus in traveling the world, looking at different healers and energy workers and other people working in esoteric areas, and tried to legitimize them from a scientific perspective. And he came up with some interesting perspectives on healing, on out-of-body experiences, did a number of experiments, and his book is a good combination book for the out-of-body experiences as well as the spiritual evolution discussion that I'll have with these 4 books in the middle. Going into the middle, the first book is by Lee Blandon, also in Europe. It's The Science of Spirituality. He talks about spiritual evolution, but he also does a very good job in summarizing the spiritual evolution topics covered in the next 3 books, The Knowledge of Reality and The Philosopher's Stone by Henry Lawrencey. You cannot get these books in the United States. You need to write to an address that you'll find at the website lawrencey.com and actually send them cash in an envelope. And they will send you the books through the mail. It'll take about a month, but these are very good books on spiritual evolution. The last book is the most complex. It's by Arthur Powell, who I also mentioned earlier when he talked about the non-physical bodies. He did a similar write-up on the solar system where he referenced other books in this book in the margins. But he talks about how the planets in the solar system and the moons of the planets are involved in spiritual development as well. So in this daisy-like design, each one of those little dots is either a planet or the moon of a planet that's involved in spiritual development. Interesting book. It goes beyond what these other books talk about, but it's also the most complex. So I would say if you're interested in reading these books, start with The Science of Spirituality, then move to The Knowledge of Reality, The Philosopher's Stone, and read The Solar System last. I hope these works give you a good background on the topic of spiritual and how things can occur, what the infrastructure is like in the non-physical dimensions. And I thank you for joining me for this podcast series. Please like this podcast as well as the series. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you for your time and for hanging in there with me. Bye-bye.